David, tell us how it was that you got out alive. That must have been mayhem. It must have been so frightening, so loud. I think about the noise, the smoke, the smells. How did you do it?
It was 6 hours. The 6 hours, I mean, when you think they started at 6 in the morning and the fire began around 12:09, 12:08, somewhere around there. First of all, early in the morning, you hear the popping sounds from the 40 millimeters. The speaker system comes on. It was Byron Sage. And he says, the siege is over. We're going to be injecting, he didn't say CS gas. He said a tear gas into the building.
Byron Sage was there and he did that?
Yeah.
Byron Sage led the crew that arrested me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He was the main FBI negotiator toward the end. He was the guy that we heard every day. This is Byron Sage. I'm your FBI negotiator. I'll be here today. Yeah, that's like you got the tenor of his voice down after hearing him all that time. But on the last day, it was, you're under arrest. Come on out. The siege is over. We're going to be putting gas into the building. It'll render the building inhabitable. It'll soak into your clothing and your furniture. You will not be able to use any things anymore. It's time to come out. That was interesting, the way they said how the destruction of the building would be complete with the CS gas, and he's basically telling us we wouldn't be able to come back, which I thought was very weird psychology, trying to get people out. But there was a lot of, there's a professor named Stuart Wright. His writing's on my website, wacosurvivors.com. There I got a whole section for Stuart. But he said early on, it's too bad there isn't a rule book that FBI goes when they're in a situation where people could die, when there's a barricaded situation. Turns out they do have a rule book, and he went through all the rules and found 11 violations of the FBI's own rule book. So they violated 11 of their own principles if they want people to come out alive and safely. And they kept saying, remember, it's all about the children. The FBI, it's all about the children. Bring the children out. Let the children go. Let the children. We're here for the children. Then why did you violate 11 principles out of your own book to get people out? I mean, there was a lot of deep psychological things that happened during the course of the 51 days. But we can go back to that in a minute. But on that last day, Byron's saying, everyone come out. So I was in the chapel area. And what happened is we opened the windows. And because there was such a wind, the tanks would come in, make a hole, put the gas in. We'd have our masks on. If you took your mask off, you would be, crying instantly. But it would blow the gas out from the area we were in. I don't think that other people were that lucky, because they were in areas of the building that were more secluded, if you will, especially the concrete structure where the kids were. Now, the kids were supposed to have been put in the underground bus, but we know that they destroyed the wall that had the entranceway to the underground bus. So it looked like there was too much debris, from what I understand, to get to the underground bus. I wasn't able to see that. When the tanks went into the building, they cut off passages to the building. So there was no way to get from where I was to where the concrete structure was. It was blocked off by debris. The concrete structure is where all the kids were put under wet blankets to try to escape the gas. And they might have done okay had it not been for the tank that went through the building directly to where the concrete structure was. And that's probably a good 10 to 20 yards through the building, and then sprayed the CS gas directly into the concrete structure. So a lot of the kids, they were actually choked to death by the gas.
Wow.
And, they did a good job of representing that in the series. And, for me, watching that scene being filmed, it was like being at Auschwitz, looking at the Cyclone B being put into the chamber. That's all I could think of. It was that direct of a parallel. And I know it sounds like I'm being dramatic, but, kids are being gassed to death. I don't care if it's CS gas or Cyclone B. You're gassing children to death.
Right.
And you're blaming the parents for it.
Right.
You have the arrogance to gas kids to death and blame their parents for it. Who the hell do you think you are?
I agree. How did you get out, though?
Okay, thanks for directing me back. I get off on tangents in case you didn't know. So, being in the chapel area, there was a a causeway behind the chapel area. It was like a hallway, and behind the hallway was where the gymnasium was. Now, through the course of the 6 hours, I say 10 in the morning, 9 in the morning, the tank started to come into the gymnasium and tear it down. And you can see pictures of this. I have pictures of this on the website. And you can see the tanks in the gymnasium, pieces of the ceiling, and then the whole gymnasium comes down and is leveled to the ground. So during the course of a few hours, they're coming in, you hear this incredible scraping sound that shakes the entire structure. And that's them leveling, the gym. And on the infrared, now it sounds like I'm skipping around, but the FBI, and again, this isn't Davidian technology, the FBI's own technology, they had a plane flying above the building from 2 miles up. And on that plane, there was an infrared video camera. And that infrared video was shooting what was happening. And when the plane comes around, you see the tank go into the structure. And then you see these fully automatic weapons fire. It's like white blast. Now, what infrared is if it's hot, anything that's hot shows up as white. Anything that is cool shows up as dark. So the landscape, even though it's a hot Texas day, shows up as dark. Every time the agent puts his foot on the gas on the tank, you see a white plume from the back of the tank. That's because it's heat. You also see these really fast, fully automatic weapons, shots of light. Boom, 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 boom. Well, the FBI claims that is sunlight reflection, reflecting off something at the back of the building. Listen, I think anyone with, oh my God, you don't need a college degree to look at an infrared, understand what it is, and say that's fully automatic weapons fire. That is not sunlight reflection. I'm sorry, it just isn't. But that's how they've justified this. And the fact that this isn't headline news in every paper that people were shot trying to exit the back of the building, it's to this day blows my mind. It's the greatest cover-up in history. Enough people know about it, but you're never going to hear it in the mainstream ever. They just can't.
So people were trying to get out of the back of the building, and this automatic gunfire was taking them down.
Yeah, but the one I was talking about earlier, that happened 10:30. Like when the tanks are going in, we see it that early. But then later, when the place is burning, you also see 2 different shooters and fully automatic weapons fire coming from 2 different positions.
So the weapons fire wasn't coming from the tank; it was coming from somewhere behind.
It's coming from right next to the tank.
All right.
As a military maneuver, someone gets out of the bottom of the tank, rolls over, and shoots when they're next to the tank. And it looks very much like a military maneuver.
Okay.
From here's the tank, like here's the shooter right here. You don't see the shooter, but you see the flashes.
The flashes.
And that's one of the things the FBI has said, though it couldn't be because you would see a figure. I'm not so sure about that. I don't think you would see a figure.
No.
And as I recall, excuse me, I just went through puberty again for some reason there with my voice. But as I recall, the original version I saw that was being for the Mike Nolte's documentary called Waco, the Rules of Engagement. That's when this first came to light. I went to William Gazecki's house, who was the editor, producer. I went to his house and he was showing me the infrared. And you actually could see the outline of a figure. It was a much clearer version than was on the actual documentary, because that's gone through a degeneration every time it's played. It goes through degeneration, right? And I remember that tape being clear. Now, the tape that they showed for Congress was even clearer, but nobody knew what to look for. They didn't know to look for that at the congressional hearing. That information hadn't come out, but it's there. So I would love to get a better copy and have experts look at that tape, but that'll never be allowed. And, we did have an expert that was going to testify for Congress, and he ended up dead just a few days before the congressional hearing.
So one ends up dead, and the rest Walter Smith struck and wouldn't let testify.
Yeah.
And this is the same Walter Smith that, was the only character witness against me in the Below trial. And I'm telling you, Gary Richardson cross-examined him and ripped that guy a new butthole.
Good.
That cross-examination is on our website right now, vicfeazell.com. So anybody wants to read it, go there and read Walter Smith's cross-examination. Gary Richardson just murderized that guy.
I'm looking forward to reading it.
And he was a federal judge.
Yeah.
And
who kept falling asleep, by the way, during our trial.
Not surprised because he was usually drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. He finally got removed from the bench for sexual misconduct, but he's still drawing full salary, over $200,000 a year for the rest of his unnatural life. And so many injustices perpetrated by that man. And he's drawing federal retirement over $200,000 a year for the rest of his life.
The system protects itself.
Yeah, it does.
All things.
So, how'd you get out of the building?
I want to talk about Walter Smith more.
We'll get back to Walter. Just tell me which wall you came out of. Was it a window? Was it a wall that fell down? How was it?
So in your mind's eye, picture the front of the building. On the side of the building, if you remember where the agent on the first day put the ladder and went up the ladder and tried to get in that room, threw a flashbang grenade in, went in, and then you see all these shots come out and he comes out and then goes down the ladder. Almost just beyond that ladder was that area that I was talking about, between the chapel and the gym. And the tanks had come in to where there was a window and made a hole in that window. So there was a big hole in the wall where we all could have gotten out of at any time. Well, I guess they made it, like later in the afternoon. But nobody wanted to exit that building. Now, I want you people at home to try to people say, why didn't you come out? The tanks are going into the building. Why didn't you come out? Listen, when you see a tank come through your living room and you have to jump out of the way as I did to avoid the tank coming through your front door, you don't go out that hole. You don't go out to the people that have just rammed your house with a tank. You just don't, man. You don't. Every one of us thought that we were going to be shot had we exited that building.
Right. That's legitimate. Yes.
Psychologically, that's what we thought. The only reason I came out is because the wall behind me caught fire and I could hear my hair singeing. And within a split-second decision, I made an executive decision. I said, okay, I'd rather be shot to death than to burn to death. So when I came out the window, I anticipated being shot. I didn't think I'd survive it. And I don't even know if I would have come out had I not seen Jamie and Derek go out of the hall, the wall, that hole in the wall. They went out and I followed suit behind them. I'm thinking no one could make it out behind me. And I turned around, I saw Clive Doyle coming out. He was patting his arms down. His arms were smoking.
I knew Clive. Yeah.
Yep. Clive made it out right behind me.
Yeah.
And then he could hear, I couldn't hear this, thank God, but he said that he could hear Wayne Martin screaming. Because minutes before the wall caught fire, Wayne Martin was to my left. I was leaning against the wall. And I looked over to Wayne, and he was standing up and leaning against the wall, and the smoke was coming around him. It was so weird. I could just see the smoke enveloping him. He took his gas mask off, and he slid down the wall into a crouched position, and then I couldn't see him anymore because there was so much smoke. And that's when the wall caught fire. It singed my hair. I went out of the hole. And then I turned around and saw Clive. Now, Clive's story was when he came out, he could hear Wayne screaming. So Wayne had caught on fire and was dying that worst death that I was trying to avoid. The image of him sliding down that wall, though, was something I'll never, ever forget.
That's so sad. So then you rolled on out into the dirt?
Yeah, unlike the series, I didn't, fly out of the window. I walked out. But we walked to where there was a Red Cross sign at the end of the property, right where the W Ranch Road was. And Byron kept saying through the sound system, go to the Red Cross sign. If you come out shooting, we're going to shoot you. Nobody came out. Everyone came out with their hands up. So we went to the Red Cross sign. They put us in a line in front of one of the tanks. They put the plastic straps on our hands behind our back. And there was two FBI guys. One was a blonde guy and one was a dark-haired individual. One had the dark-haired individual had a mustache. And he had an AR-15. And the blonde guy had a pad of paper and a pencil, and he was writing. And they were saying, where are the kids? You know where the kids are. You have to live with this for the rest of your life. Where are the children? I said, the children should be in the underground bus. You guys know all about the underground bus. And he said, the other guy said to him, we tear gas the bus. And I was just like, oh my God, I thought to myself. And then they said, I knew this wasn't going to work. We should have gone with plan B.